I'm not quite sure how to start this story, but I guess the best way is to just dive in. My name is Jake, and I used to think I had a pretty good life. I'm in my early 30s, married to a woman named Sarah, and we had been together for almost 10 years. We met in college, got married right after graduation, and settled down in a cute little house in a nice neighborhood. On paper, we seemed like the perfect couple. She was a beautiful woman with a sharp wit, and I was a stable guy working as a financial analyst. We had our ups and downs, sure, but who does? Lately, though, things had felt off. Sarah had been acting strange, distant, secretive, and preoccupied. At first, I chalked it up to stress from her job as a marketing executive. She was working long hours, often coming home late, and I had assumed she was just swamped with deadlines. But as the weeks went by, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. I noticed she was spending more time on her phone, scrolling through messages with a strange intensity. And there was this one time when I caught her quickly closing her laptop when I walked into the room. That raised a red flag for me. I started to wonder if my insecurities were getting the best of me. I've always been a bit paranoid when it comes to relationships. It's just part of my nature. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. And then, one fateful Tuesday evening, everything came crashing down. I had just gotten home from work, ready to prepare dinner. Sarah was supposed to be home at 6, but she texted me that she'd be late. No big deal, I figured I'd whip up some pasta for myself. Then, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I heard my phone buzz. It was a message from one of my best friends, Tom. He didn't message me often, so I instantly wondered what was up. The message was short and to the point. Dude, saw Sarah at the Blue Lounge with some guy. Looked pretty cozy. My heart sank. The Blue Lounge was a bar downtown that we frequented as a couple. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the thought of Sarah with another man made my stomach churn. I told myself it was probably just a misunderstanding, maybe it was a work event or something. But the doubt lingered in my mind like a dark cloud. I decided to drive over and see for myself. When I arrived at the bar, I was a bundle of nerves. I walked in and scanned the room until I spotted her. There she was, sitting at the bar, laughing and leaning in close to a man I didn't recognize. He was wearing a crisp suit and had that cocky air about him that immediately set off alarm bells in my head. I could see her flipping her hair, the way she used to do when she was flirting. My blood was boiling, and my heart raced as I tried to process the scene unfolding before me. I stood there, frozen for what felt like an eternity, watching this betrayal unfold right in front of my eyes. I should have felt angry, but what I felt was a profound sadness that weighed heavy on my chest. I turned on my heel and left, my mind racing with thoughts of how I would confront her. When she finally got home a couple of hours later, she had that same carefree attitude as if nothing had happened. I could hardly contain my anger. I needed answers. As soon as she stepped through the door, I confronted her. "Where were you tonight, Sarah?" The look of confusion on her face was palpable. "I was working late, Jake. You got my message, right?" I didn't hold back. "I saw you at the Blue Lounge with some guy. What the hell is going on?" Her reaction was immediate shock and denial. "What? That's ridiculous. I was out with a coworker discussing a campaign we're working on. You can't just jump to conclusions without knowing the facts." But I could see right through her lies, the way she stumbled over her words, the nervousness in her eyes. I felt betrayed, and it cut deeper than I could ever have imagined. That was just the beginning of a long and painful journey, filled with anger, confusion, and ultimately the cold realization that I had to make a choice about my future. Little did I know how this twisted web of betrayal would lead me down a path I had never expected to take. After that initial confrontation, everything changed. The air in our house felt heavy, suffocating even. I tried to go about my daily routine, but thoughts of Sarah and her betrayal consumed me. I could feel my heart racing every time I saw her. She was moving around the house like a ghost, and I was haunted by the image of her laughing with that guy at the bar. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living a lie, and the trust we had built over the years felt shattered. Sarah tried to brush it off as a misunderstanding, but I wasn't buying it. She claimed that the guy was just a colleague, someone she had been working with on a promotional campaign. However, my gut told me otherwise. The way she had been acting, the way she seemed to light up around him, it all pointed in a direction I never wanted to acknowledge. I decided to do some digging. I started paying more attention to Sarah's routine. I kept track of when she was coming home late, who she was texting, and the way she acted when I was around. It took me a few days, but I finally found a slip-up. One night while she was showering, I noticed her phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. Curiosity got the best of me and I picked it up. There it was, a message from the same guy I saw her with at the bar, casually asking if she'd be free to meet up again. My heart sank deeper. I quickly put the phone back down, my mind racing with a whirlwind of emotions. That night I barely slept. I tossed and turned in bed, replaying everything over and over in my mind. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal that was so intense I thought I might explode. The next day, I decided I needed to confront her again. I needed the truth, and I was done with her lies. When I approached her that evening, I could tell she was on edge. "We need to talk," I said. "No more excuses or lies, just the truth." She looked at me, her face paling slightly. "Jake, what are you talking about? I told you." "Stop," I interrupted. "I saw the messages on your phone. You're seeing someone else, aren't you?" The look on her face was one of panic, but then it quickly morphed into a defensive posture. "You're being paranoid. You don't understand how stressful my job is. That guy is just a friend." "Just a friend," I shot back. "You don't text friends like that, Sarah. I know what I saw. You were at the bar with him, and I'm tired of the lies. Just admit it." Her mask finally slipped. "Okay, fine. We had a few drinks together. It wasn't a big deal, Jake. Nothing happened." I felt my heart drop. "Nothing happened," I echoed, incredulous. "You went out with him and you expect me to believe that? You can't be serious." "What do you want from me?" she shouted, frustration bubbling over. I was feeling lonely. "You're always working late and I just needed someone to talk to." Her words cut deep. I had always tried to prioritize our relationship, but I had been so focused on my career that I hadn't realized how isolated she felt. It didn't excuse her actions, but it painted a clearer picture of how we had reached this point. I felt a wave of sadness hit me, mixed with anger. "You made the choice to cheat instead of talking to me about your feelings," I replied, my voice shaking. "You could have come to me, but instead you went behind my back." She opened her mouth to respond, but then closed it, as if she didn't know what to say. I could see the guilt creeping into her expression, and it filled me with a sense of vindication. She finally knew I wasn't going to let her lie to me anymore. The rest of the evening was tense. We both knew that our marriage was hanging by a thread, and the trust that once defined our relationship had been shattered. I went to bed that night, leaving her alone in the living room, feeling like a stranger in my own home. Over the following days, I was an emotional wreck. I oscillated between anger and sadness, thinking about what I wanted to do next. I talked to my friends about it, and they encouraged me to think about my options. A part of me wanted to salvage the marriage, to try couples counseling and work it out, but deep inside I knew that things would never be the same again. I felt betrayed, and I couldn't simply forget. The final straw came when I learned that the guy she was seeing was actually my lawyer. I stumbled upon that detail when I was having lunch with a colleague who happened to know a mutual friend. The thought of my wife being unfaithful with someone I had trusted to help guide me through financial matters made my blood boil. I felt a newfound rage bubbling inside me. I needed to take action, but I also had to think strategically. It was time to turn the tables. I would not be the victim in this situation. I needed a new lawyer, one who could help me take back what was mine and ensure that Sarah wouldn't walk away unscathed. I refused to let her betrayal go unpunished, and that's when I started to think about revenge. She had taken a slice of my life. It was time for me to take back everything else. The realization that my wife was cheating with my lawyer ignited something within me, a fierce desire for revenge. I knew I had to act quickly. The first step was to find a new lawyer, someone I could trust completely. I reached out to friends and family, asking for recommendations, and it didn't take long for someone to connect me with a highly regarded divorce attorney named Laura. She had a reputation for being tough and unyielding, which was exactly what I needed. I scheduled a consultation with Laura for the following week. When I walked into her office, I immediately felt a sense of relief. She was sharp, direct, and didn't sugarcoat anything. As I laid out my situation, I could see her taking notes, her brow furrowing as I explained Sarah's infidelity and the betrayal I felt. "Jake, I'll be honest with you," she said, looking me in the eyes. "Your wife's actions give you a solid case for divorce. Infidelity is taken seriously in court, especially when it involves someone in a position of trust, like your lawyer. You have every right to seek the best outcome for yourself in this situation." Her words sent a rush of adrenaline through me. For the first time since discovering Sarah's affair, I felt a sense of control. I wasn't going to be a passive participant in this nightmare. I was going to fight back. I discussed my finances, our assets, and the lifestyle we had built together. Laura assured me that we could pursue everything I wanted, my share of the house, the savings, and even the car. As we worked through the details, I could feel a plan forming in my mind. I wanted not only to win the divorce, but also to make sure Sarah understood the consequences of her actions. Part of me wanted her to feel the pain I had experienced, to feel like she had lost everything she held dear. I imagined her face when she realized that the life she had taken for granted was slipping away from her. After our meeting, I felt invigorated. I went home, determined to collect evidence that would support my case. I needed to document every detail of Sarah's infidelity. I started by gathering her text messages, social media activity, and any correspondence that could prove her betrayal. I even went so far as to install a discreet app on my phone that would allow me to monitor her activities. It felt invasive, but I had to be thorough. A few weeks passed as I meticulously collected information. Meanwhile, Sarah was acting as if nothing had changed. She continued to come home late, often giving me weak excuses for her whereabouts. I could sense that she felt the distance growing between us, but instead of trying to mend things, she seemed to double down on her behavior. I was growing increasingly frustrated, but I was also resolute. My plans were coming together. Eventually, I had enough evidence to make my case. During one particularly contentious evening, I confronted her again. "I know everything, Sarah. I've seen the messages, the texts, and I know who you've been with. You think you can just lie to me and get away with it?" She looked taken aback, but I could see a flicker of defiance in her eyes. "Jake, stop. You're being ridiculous. You're just trying to make me feel guilty for no reason." "Guilty? You've cheated on me with my lawyer. You think I'm the one who should feel guilty?" My voice was rising now, fueled by a mixture of anger and righteous indignation. "Maybe you should have paid more attention to me," she shot back, her own anger flaring. "You were always buried in your work and I was lonely." "Lonely? Is that your excuse for sleeping with someone else? You don't get to justify your actions." I could feel the heat rising in my chest. "You think I'll just let this slide? No, Sarah, I'm done playing nice. I'm filing for divorce and I'm taking everything." Her face paled, the realization washing over her. "You wouldn't do that," she said, but I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. "Try me," I replied coldly. I felt a sense of power wash over me as I made my stance clear. This was no longer a matter of salvaging our marriage. This was about reclaiming my life and my dignity. The following week, I officially filed for divorce with Laura's help. I felt a mix of anxiety and exhilaration as I signed the paperwork. I was heading into a legal battle, and I was ready to fight tooth and nail to protect what was mine. As the process began, Sarah's reaction was a blend of shock and anger. She didn't expect me to actually follow through, and that realization only fueled my determination. Every time I had to face her, I felt a rush of adrenaline. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about taking control of my life again. In court, Laura was a force to be reckoned with. She had meticulously prepared our case, and I began to feel a growing confidence. As we presented the evidence of Sarah's affair, I could see her fuming in frustration. It was almost satisfying to see the tables turned, the power dynamics shifting in my favor. I had started this journey feeling broken, but now I was ready to emerge from the ashes. I was no longer the man who had been blindsided by betrayal. I was a man with a plan, ready to reclaim my life and finally let go of the toxic relationship that had consumed me for far too long. As the divorce proceedings unfolded, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. Every time I stepped into the court, I could see the displeasure etched on Sarah's face. She had underestimated me, thinking I would be a passive victim in this whole ordeal. But with Laura by my side, I felt empowered. I was ready to take back everything she had tried to strip away from me, my dignity, my trust, and even my love for her, which had turned sour. The court battles were intense. Laura worked diligently to build a strong case against Sarah, presenting evidence of her infidelity and the emotional turmoil it had caused me. We meticulously detailed how Sarah had been unfaithful with my lawyer, emphasizing the breach of trust not just in our marriage, but in my professional life. Each session felt like a step toward reclaiming my life, and I could see the cracks forming in Sarah's confidence. One of the most telling moments came when Laura cross-examined Sarah. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as Laura dove deep into the details of Sarah's affair, exposing the lengths she had gone to keep it hidden. "Isn't it true, Sarah, that you continued to deceive your husband while you were sleeping with his lawyer?" Laura pressed, her voice steady. Sarah faltered, her defenses crumbling in the face of such direct questioning. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a mistake," she blurted, desperation creeping into her tone. "A mistake," Laura echoed, her brow raised. "You willingly went out with him multiple times, shared intimate moments, and kept your husband in the dark. This wasn't a simple mistake, this was a conscious choice to betray his trust." The look on Sarah's face was one of disbelief mixed with anger. I could feel my heart pounding as I watched this play out. It was surreal to see my wife, the woman I thought I knew, unraveling in front of everyone. I had never wanted to hurt her, but in this moment it felt like justice was being served. After several hearings and considerable back and forth, the judge finally called for a settlement conference. It was time to discuss the division of assets, and I was prepared to fight for everything I had worked hard for. I wanted our house, half of the savings, and a fair share of our joint accounts. I wasn't going to let her walk away with anything after what she had done. As we gathered in the conference room, the air was thick with tension. I sat across from Sarah, who had a defiant look in her eyes. It was clear she thought she could still manipulate the situation, but I had learned enough about her tricks by now. It was time to set the record straight. Laura started by laying out our demands clearly, emphasizing the emotional distress Sarah's affair had caused me. "Jake deserves to walk away from this marriage with the assets he contributed to and to compensate for the emotional damage he suffered," she stated firmly. Sarah's attorney, who had been the same lawyer I once trusted, squirmed slightly. He tried to downplay the affair and divert attention to the fact that Sarah had been the primary earner in our relationship. But Laura countered every point with a calm precision that left me feeling increasingly confident. "Let's not forget," Laura said, her tone unwavering, "that Jake's contributions to this marriage go beyond finances. He has been an emotional support for Sarah, and her betrayal has not only destroyed their relationship, but has also led to significant emotional and mental turmoil for him. We believe he deserves fair compensation for that." After several hours of intense negotiation, we finally reached a settlement. I couldn't believe it when Laura laid out the final terms. I would keep the house, the majority of our savings, and a larger share of our joint accounts. It felt surreal to know that not only had I emerged victorious, but I had also gained back the sense of control and dignity that had been stripped from me. As we walked out of the building, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was finally free from the toxic hold that Sarah had over my life. I had gone through the fire and come out the other side stronger, more resilient, and ready to embrace a new chapter. But as much as I wanted to celebrate, I couldn't shake the emotional toll this ordeal had taken on me. The anger and sadness lingered, and yes, I still felt betrayed. I spent the next few weeks processing everything, seeking support from friends and family, and allowing myself to grieve the loss of the relationship I had cherished. I also took time to focus on myself. I started hitting the gym again, rediscovering old hobbies, and even making plans for future trips I had always wanted to take. It felt liberating to put myself first for a change. I began to rebuild my life, brick by brick, determined to create a future that didn't include the shadows of my past. But there was still one final confrontation I needed to have with Sarah. I wanted her to understand the consequences of her actions, not just for me but for herself. I knew it would be painful, but I felt that I owed it to myself to express how deeply her betrayal had affected me. I invited her over, hoping to have a civil conversation. When she arrived, I could see a mixture of anger and regret in her eyes. It was time to lay everything out on the table. I needed her to face the reality of what she had done. Sarah, I began, trying to keep my voice steady. I wanted you to know how your actions have affected me. You didn't just betray my trust, you tore apart everything we built together. I never thought I would be in this position, but here we are. She looked away, unable to meet my gaze. I know I messed up, Jake, but I was lonely and I thought you would never notice. Lonely? You could have talked to me. You could have come to me and shared what you were feeling, I said, my voice rising slightly. Instead, you chose betrayal. You made that choice, and now you have to live with the consequences. Sarah's expression shifted from anger to sadness as she finally met my eyes. I was wrong. I didn't think it through. I paused, allowing the weight of my words to sink in. I hope you take this experience and learn from it, not just for the sake of future relationships, but for yourself. I'm moving on, and I hope you can too. With that, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. I had said what needed to be said, and now it was time for both of us to heal in our own ways. I left that conversation feeling lighter, more at peace with the choices I had made and the life I was embarking on. I had taken back my power, and now I was ready to embrace the future, leaving the shadows of betrayal behind. In the weeks following my confrontation with Sarah, I took a step back to reflect on everything that had transpired. The divorce was finalized, and I could finally breathe again. It felt like I had emerged from a long, dark tunnel into a world filled with possibilities. I knew that healing would take time, but I was determined to focus on myself, on rediscovering who I was outside of my marriage. I threw myself into work, picking up extra projects and even volunteering for leadership roles. My colleagues noticed a change in me. I was more focused, more engaged. It felt good to pour my energy into something productive, and I found fulfillment in the challenges I embraced. I also started reconnecting with friends, planning outings, and surrounding myself with people who supported me. They were there to lift me up, and I cherished those moments of laughter and camaraderie. I also realized that I needed to confront the emotional weight Sarah's betrayal had left on me. So, I decided to seek therapy. I found a therapist named Dr. Jensen, who specialized in helping people process betrayal and loss. Our sessions became a safe space for me to unpack the emotional turmoil I had been feeling. I talked about the anger, sadness, and sense of betrayal I had endured, and Dr. Jensen guided me through understanding that these feelings were valid and necessary for my healing. During one session, I shared how often I found myself replaying moments from my relationship with Sarah in my mind. I keep thinking about all the good times we had and how it all came crashing down, I admitted, my voice tinged with frustration. It's like I'm stuck between nostalgia and anger. Dr. Jensen nodded, encouraging me to explore those feelings. It's natural to remember the good, Jake, but it's essential to recognize the reality of the situation. The love you had doesn't erase the betrayal. You're allowed to miss those moments while also being angry about what she did. That conversation resonated deeply with me. I began to understand that I could honor the memories without allowing them to dictate my feelings about the present. It was a liberating realization, one that began to lighten the emotional load I had been carrying. One day, during a session, Dr. Jensen encouraged me to set personal goals. "What do you want to achieve for yourself now?" she asked. I took a moment to think about it. I wanted to travel more, explore new places, and maybe even find new hobbies. I had always dreamed of visiting Europe, and I realized that now was the perfect time to pursue that dream. With newfound determination, I began planning a trip to Italy. I researched the best places to visit, the food I wanted to try, and even took up Italian lessons online. The anticipation of exploring a new culture and soaking in the beauty of the Italian countryside filled me with excitement. It was a fresh start, a way to embrace life again. As I prepared for my trip, I also took the time to delve into my passions. I started painting again, a hobby I had abandoned years ago. I would spend weekends in my studio, losing myself in the strokes of color on canvas. It was a therapeutic outlet, a way to express the emotions I had been processing. The art began to reflect my journey, pieces that evolved from dark and chaotic to bright and hopeful, echoing my path toward healing. In the midst of this transformation, I also gained clarity about what I wanted in future relationships. I had learned valuable lessons from my marriage, particularly about the importance of communication and trust. I was ready to open my heart again, but I knew it would take time. Then came the day of my trip. I boarded the plane to Italy with a heart full of hope and curiosity. The moment I stepped off the plane in Rome, I felt a rush of exhilaration. The sights, the sounds, the air. It was all so vibrant and alive. I was on the cusp of a new chapter, and I was determined to make the most of it. As I explored the streets of Rome, wandered through the ancient ruins, and savored gelato by the Trevi Fountain, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't experienced in years. I met locals who shared their stories, fellow travelers who became friends, and for the first time in a long while I felt genuinely happy. I was creating new memories, ones that would fill the void left by my past. One evening, as I watched the sunset over the Amalfi Coast, I reflected on my journey. I thought about how far I had come, from the pain of betrayal to the joy of rediscovering myself. I realized that my experience with Sarah had shaped me, but it wouldn't define me. I was ready to embrace love again, but this time it would be on my terms. When I returned home, I felt refreshed and rejuvenated. I was no longer the man broken by betrayal. I was a man reborn, filled with hope and strength. I started to date again, taking things slow and being open about my past. I met someone named Emily, a kind-hearted woman who shared my love for travel and art. Our connection blossomed naturally, and I found myself looking forward to each date with her. For the first time, I felt excited about the possibility of love. As I navigated this new chapter, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the lessons I had learned. I was no longer the man who would ignore his instincts or let someone else dictate his worth. I had taken back my power, and I was determined to never let anyone take it away again. It was a journey of healing, self-discovery, and ultimately, finding hope in the ashes of betrayal. I had come to learn that while love could bring pain, it could also lead to incredible joy, and I was ready to embrace that joy on my own terms. As my relationship with Emily deepened, I found myself reflecting on everything I had experienced over the past year. The journey had been tumultuous, a wild ride through heartbreak, betrayal, and ultimately, the rediscovery of who I truly was. I had emerged stronger and more self-aware, no longer the passive partner I had once been in my marriage. Emily was everything I had hoped to find in a partner. She was kind, grounded, and open about her feelings. We would talk for hours about our dreams and the things that mattered most to us. I felt a sense of ease with her that I hadn't experienced in years. It was refreshing to be with someone who was emotionally available and willing to communicate. One evening, as we sat on my balcony enjoying a homemade dinner, I decided it was time to share my story with her. I wanted her to understand the journey I had been on and the scar tissue I carried from my marriage. I took a deep breath, my heart racing slightly. "Emily, there's something important I need to tell you about my past," I began. I recounted the story of my marriage to Sarah, the love, the trust, and the betrayal. I talked about the emotional fallout I had experienced and how it had shaped my perspective on relationships. I could see Emily listening intently, her expression a mix of empathy and understanding. "It's hard to hear, but I appreciate you being so honest with me," she said gently. "It shows how much you've grown." That moment of vulnerability brought us even closer together. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, knowing that I could be open about my past without fear of judgment. In the days that followed, we continued to nurture our connection, exploring new places together, attending art exhibits, and enjoying each other's company. She became a breath of fresh air, reminding me that love could still be beautiful even after heartbreak. As the months rolled on, I found myself more at ease with the idea of building a future with Emily. One evening, under the stars at a cozy outdoor cafe, I took her hand and said, "I want to take this journey with you. I'm ready for us to explore what the future holds together." She smiled, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I feel the same way, Jake. I'm here for it all." With Emily by my side, I started envisioning a life filled with new adventures, shared dreams, and mutual respect. I even took a leap and organized a group trip for us and a few close friends to revisit Italy, this time to experience it with someone who truly appreciated all it had to offer. As we roamed the cobblestone streets of Florence, laughter ringing out as we sampled local wines and explored art galleries, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I realized that I was no longer haunted by the ghosts of my past. I had truly moved on. I had learned that while love could lead to pain, it could also lead to incredible joy. I was grateful for the lessons I had learned, even if they had come through difficult circumstances. With each day that passed, the shadows of my previous relationship faded further into the background. I no longer felt the need to constantly look over my shoulder, worried about betrayal or loss. Instead, I had embraced vulnerability, allowing myself to love and be loved with an open heart. One evening, as we strolled along the banks of the Arno River, the golden sunset painting the sky with warm tones, I turned to Emily and said, "You know, I thought I would never be able to feel this way again. You've brought so much light into my life." Her expression softened and she squeezed my hand. "You deserve all the happiness in the world, Jake. You fought hard to reclaim your life, and I'm just glad I get to be a part of it." As we stood there, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. I had come so far, through betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately healing. I had taken back my power, learned to set boundaries, and rediscovered the beauty of love. Looking back, I could now see that my experience with Sarah had shaped me into a stronger, wiser person. I had learned that it was okay to be vulnerable, and that true love was built on trust, respect, and honest communication. I was ready to embrace my future with hope, knowing that whatever came my way, I would face it head-on, armed with the lessons of my past. And so I embraced this new chapter in my life, full of possibility and love, ready for whatever adventures awaited me with Emily by my side. Life was no longer defined by betrayal. It was an open road, and I was ready to travel it, one step at a time.